morning.
Good morning.
I'm excited. We're excited. I can speak for us, right?
Yes,
We're excited.
I'm excited too. This is my excited look.
Because our friend, Terri Elofson Bly, my long time friend, is joining us as soon as she gets her coffee made.
So you met in the
We met
10th
the
grade?
last day of ninth grade.
Right.
Yes. Her mom was the guidance counselor, front desk admin, and I was there to get registered to start school at Moorhead High the next year. And Terri came in on a break and we were in the same grade. So we became good friends almost from that moment. Anyway, Terri's joining us in a minute because she wants to follow up. Let me restate that. I want her to follow up on Tuesday's conversation. You know, we've only been doing this for a year and a half. I can't remember what day we do this. Terri's coming on to follow up on Tuesday's conversation because she sent me an email after she watched it, or a text. Apparently I can't use any of my correct words. With some
We got a telegram.
An SOS guy came through. She followed up with, I think, something really important. And here she is. So I don't even have to try to vamp while we make this work. I'm going to bring her on
Yeah, we're going to spoil it.
right now. Good morning, Terri.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
We
Yes.
can.
All right.
How you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Did you get your coffee made? Ta-da!
There's no way anything good was going to happen if I didn't have my coffee.
No, I didn't. You'll notice I didn't write to you and say, wait, what? I just said, yeah, we'll see you when we see you.
Yeah, we both nodded knowingly.
So, Tara, thanks for joining us. I was just giving a little backstory that you had sent me this really fascinating text kind of as a follow-up to our conversation. And while I'm not at all interested in you feeling like this needs to be your therapy session and you work through your trauma on our show,
Mm-hmm.
I am fascinated. A, tell us what you do. And B, then let's move into talking about this sort of difference between dealing with disappointment and things that trigger potential past trauma, because I think that's a really important distinction. So first, tell us what you do, because you're a little more qualified to talk about this than say I am.
So I'm a licensed clinical psychologist with still a massive sinus infection. So I apologize if I sound like I'm talking through a pillow. So I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I work for an organization called LE Mental Health. I'm in Mendota Heights. And so that's what I do. I work with all sorts of, people dealing with all sorts of issues. But one of the things, of course, that we talk about is trauma and adversity, because that's what brings people to therapy a lot of times. So what can I say? What do you want me to talk about in terms of what I was about?
I was really fascinated by this EMDR training that you went through. So talk about that, because I thought the way you laid out this 1 to 10 scale was so useful for anybody who ever has one of those moments where you think, this feels like I'm kind of out of control.
Yeah.
Why can't I manage this? I love this explanation. So just talk about that.
Okay. So one thing that we rule of thumb that, like you said, is really useful is when we have a reaction to a situation in the now, in the present, that maybe most people would be upset about. So the examples that you gave about me the other day. So when my pain au chocolat did not turn out, I'd spent, a couple days working on it. So it's understandable to be disappointed, right? So most people would be bummed. But let's say I had, thrown them against the wall and said, I suck and I failed because I'm a failure and nothing I make will ever turn out. And I locked myself in my room, and you guys had to awkwardly see yourselves out the door. So that's higher than a 3 or a 4 on a scale of 1 to 10.
Oh, God.
So the scale we use is 1 is 0 or 1 is no distress. 10 is the most distress you can imagine. So anything above a 3 or a 4, when that's the way most people would respond, we use as a rule of thumb that, hey, this is about something more than just the pastries not turning out. Could be because you're tired, could be because you had a bad day, could be because you've got some hormone stuff going on. But if you notice it happens consistently, like let's say at my bridal shower, instead of it being about what I was wearing, I'd made cupcakes and they didn't turn out. And I had thrown them at the wall and locked myself in my room and had ruined the whole evening. And so you start to notice a pattern, like, why is it that whenever I make stuff and it doesn't turn out, I go into this spiral about what a horrible person I am and nothing I do will ever turn out and whatever. So that's the indication, hey, this is about something more than just baked goods. And I feel about my baked goods.
Yeah.
That tells us there's probably some past trauma that we haven't really dealt with, that we dealt with in a way that made it about some big flaw, some existential flaw, some permanent thing that's wrong with us.
Yeah.
So let's say, I'm going to extend that analogy a little bit. Let's say that when I was like 10 and I'd started baking, that every time my cookies didn't turn out, my dad would yell at me for like wasting a pound of butter, or, okay, it was the 80s, so wasting a pound of margarine. And, you know, like, how, like, I can't believe you wasted your, you know, our ingredients, and you know what, you suck at this, you should probably never bake anything. But so now we've got some indication that, hey, maybe it's because when I was a kid and I made stuff and it didn't turn out, my parents, who are supposed to love me and be supportive, instead ridiculed me or shamed me or whatever. So now I've got this thing that I haven't worked through. And so every time it gets tapped into, I have this huge amplified response because I haven't been able to get to that point of learning from my experiences in a way that's healthy. The pan au chocolat example, a healthy learning experience is that you can't let the butter soften or it's not going to turn out. An unhealthy learning experience is I suck as a human and should never try to make anything. Right? Because I never learned that lesson in a healthy way.
And also probably just shouldn't try to be anything, right? I mean, it can extend far beyond, well, I just don't bake, to I'm a terrible person, just full stop.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, the baking analogy was for simplicity's sake. But
right.
Yeah. So if we notice that there's certain areas of our lives, social situations or perfection. So this would be like a perfectionist thing, where something doesn't go the way you want it to, that you go into this, you know, shame spiral about how horrible you are. That's an indication that we got to work through this stuff that got stuck in our emotional brain, in that, you know, that shame place, that where we can't think, we can't learn, we just react, and we go into these huge amplified emotional places. We get triggered. I mean, that's what it is. That's what being triggered is. And when we're triggered, it's not a sign that we shouldn't do those things. It's a sign that we've got to go back and do that work around that stuff that we never really processed.
Yeah. So, I want to give you an example, because you probably don't know this. Other people have heard me talk about this, but I'm curious to know if you think this fits into this. I think it does. But again, I've only played a psychologist on TV. I'm not a psychologist. So I think it's important to make that differentiation. So when Maz was drinking, drank in the basement, and he would say to me, if we were going somewhere, oh, I'm going to just go down and turn the lights off. And then he'd be gone for 15 minutes because he was downstairs drinking. So after he came home and was sober, I don't know, he'd been home for 6 months, and he went downstairs to do something quick and was down there for a long time. And I went from, if 10 is worst, I was at an 11. And I lost my mind. And I mean, totally irrationally, I had 6 months of good behavior, you know, good experiences, but it was very clear to me that I had some stuff I had to work through. So I see you nodding. So I think you agree with me that it's an example of what we're talking about. How in the world, when it's really deep, I mean, this stuff was deep, but it happened in my adult life. We were able to talk about it. We, you know, how in the world do you start to do this work when it's something that goes way back?
Well, and that's what I love I mean, I'm not here to like advertise EMDR, but it is what I love about EMDR.
What's that
what I
stand
loved about
for?
the training. Eye movement, desensitization and reprocessing.
Oh, no wonder that took you a second.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nobody ever says all the words, you know,
Yeah.
out loud. It's just EMDR. So I forget that that's what it stands for. Yes. Eye movement. So people know it as like the back and forth eye movement thing. It's actually much more comprehensive than that. It's not just, you know, it's talk about your memories and while your eyes go back and forth. What I love about it though, and it actually, one thing I wanted to mention is it can be really effective for people with addictions, with substance use disorders and addictions, because we know that a lot of people, the majority of people with substance use issues have a history of trauma, whether it's big T trauma or little T trauma, meaning big T traumas are like, you know, war, rape, abuse, like the things that we know are severely traumatic, or whether it's adversity, like, you know, bullying in grade school, that's adversity that leaves a mark that causes, we know that changes the brain when you're bullied. So a lot of the vast majority of people with addictions, substance use disorders have some kind of maybe more than average person adversity in their background, and they get triggered, and what they don't have is a mechanism for walking themselves back to a place of 3 or a 4 on an emotionally tolerable scale, right? So the example you were giving is, yeah, when it's more recent trauma, you know, people have been in a relationship with someone with an addiction, when they start to see little signs or they have those little memories, those little, you know, that maybe they notice the person has had a stressful day and they think, oh my God, and they, you know, the partner gets all triggered because they're like, oh, last time this happened, you know, things went really badly. So that's, you know, you're getting triggered. It is because of a trauma, and you can work through it. Again, you can use EMDR, it's therapy or whatever, your own internal resources. But if it's that old stuff, then what you do, what to kind of summarize EMDR in a like elevator speech,
Right. In the 30
is it
seconds of, yeah.
is it looks at what are the beliefs you have about yourself now that are negative, that keep you stuck. And then it starts to look at what are the earliest memories you have of believing that about yourself. So if going back to the baking analogy again, this is just using it for simplicity's sake. It would be, so if something I bake doesn't turn out and I go into this, I'm a failure, I'm never going to be good at anything, everything I try just, you know, bombs. Then I look at, okay, what's the earliest memory I have of feeling that way, of thinking that way about myself? Okay, well, I guess in first grade, I remember not doing well on a test and coming home and getting screamed at and told I was, you know, never going to graduate or something, you know. And so you start looking at so what EMDR does is it sets in motion those memories that allows your adult brain to process them the way your brain knows how to do. Our brains know how to turn things into wisdom. So when things don't get processed, it becomes baggage. When it gets processed in a healthy way, it becomes wisdom, right? And our brains know how to do this, but it gets stuck. And so we go back to that baggage, the origin of that baggage, and it sets our brain in motion of processing it so that and it's fascinating to watch as a therapist, as I'm doing the EMDR stuff, watching them go through that process of digesting that memory and getting to the place on their own of realizing what it really meant, what that situation really meant, and how the person who reacted to them, how it was really on them, and how they shouldn't have been treated that way. They shouldn't have been talked to like that. And they can start to heal that way and learn and then watch it happen in real time. Watch them realize kind of, oh, that's what that was about. And oh, that's what that meant.
Wow.
And so then they go to the next memory in that sequence and they process that until they get to the now. And then you could have them say, okay, remember that time when those cupcakes didn't turn out, let's go there. And then you sit with that and you start to process that memory in a way that allows your brain to do what it knows how to do, which is, so the other thing I wanted to mention is in order for that to work, so that example you gave the other day of my bridal shower and Paul had taken me aside and it kind of talked me off the ledge. What he did is he connected me to something I already knew up here,
Mm.
which was that it didn't need to be that big of a deal. But in my emotional state, I couldn't access what I knew. What Paul did was sort of figuratively take me by the hand and walk me over to what I already knew. If I didn't already know that, it wouldn't have worked. I'd have just felt invalidated, and it would have made things worse. But I already knew that it didn't have to be that big of a deal.
Yeah.
So if we have that knowing, we just can't get ourselves to feel it. That's another sign that we've got this baggage in our past that's keeping us stuck. So I might know that nobody cares what I'm wearing. Nobody cares what I look like. I might know that. I might know that, like, if my cupcakes don't have the perfectly pillowy tops or whatever, that people aren't going to be like, oh my God, can you believe those cupcakes? Right? I can know that, but if I can't feel it, then it doesn't matter what anyone tells me. I have to be able to link what I know to what I'm feeling in order for it to stick.
Terri, I feel like you've just
explained everything.
Explained my whole life. And I wish you didn't live so far away, because I probably need to make an appointment, and I'm not really sure you should see your good friend.
Probably can't be, or yeah. 35 years of history kind of rules you out as a potential.
Oh my gosh, so interesting. I have to put this note up because you'll appreciate who it's from.
Oh, hey, Heidi.
We went to high school with as well.
Speaking of people we've known for over 35 years.
Absolutely. Yes. You in particular.
I've known her for over 40 years, believe it or not.
Yeah. Wow.
So sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm just going to keep saying wow.
I am too. So that actually, and I don't begrudge anyone any of my counselors when I was in rehab, because if they actually sat down and explained it to me, I wouldn't care. All I cared about the fact that what they were saying to me was making a lot of sense. And it's actually what you just explained. So I don't know if it's a counselor's job in a rehabilitation center to actually give you the academic explanation, but I'm glad whatever they told me works, because you've just explained it to me. I was about 5 years late, but it does actually make a lot of sense.
Well, I'm a sciencey person, so I need to know why something works. And so I totally dig into the science part of it, of understanding how the brain works. And so speaking of what, the other thing I'll explain then is that those trauma memories get stored in a different part of the brain. They get stored in the part of our brain that's just emotional. It's like that lizard brain, that fight or flight place, place that reacts and tries to protect us. And that's all it knows how to do. React and protect, react and protect. It just doesn't know how to do it in a very nuanced, sophisticated or logical way. But those memories get stored there. And then wisdom memories get stored in a different place, which means you can access them when you want, and you can reason through them. You can think about them. You can add new information and reflect on it. You can still have emotions and access that place, right? Like we can be sad or upset and still access what we've learned and how can I make good use of this moment. But when those memories are stored in that other place of the brain, we can't do anything but react. We literally can't. That's why that growth that you were talking about on Tuesday, the growth is moving those memories, those emotions, those reactions from that place that can't reason, that can't think, over to the place that can make good use of that experience.
Wow.
And I really love this distinction between baggage and wisdom.
Yeah.
That you can take something that's baggage and make it wisdom. You're not doomed to just suffer with baggage your whole life. It doesn't negate the experience, but it validates it and makes it a positive versus a negative.
Yeah. And we don't talk about that much. We talk about, like, if I have baggage or I have triggers, then the job is to just avoid those things that trigger me, or just not, you just have to deal with my baggage. And that's not true at all.
Wow.
So Terri, I got another question, Terri. I'm sorry to keep bringing up you and baking, because this shouldn't be a yardstick, but you said that you were this was a 3 thing, right? And obviously the number gets higher. It's as you said, it's a more emotional and more physical response. What if it's below a 2? Is there a problem there?
Yep. So we go into, some of us go more frequently into that fight or flight, that hyper arousal. Yeah.
I can't relate to that.
I'm beginning to think that my lizard brain is a lot bigger than I thought it was.
So if you're somebody who deals with like those triggering situations by freaking out, which I'm definitely on that list, that is one way of dealing with it. That's the 9, 10, 8, 9, 10. But Maz, to your point, it's not necessarily that it's a 0, but there's another place you can go, which is hypoarousal, which is freeze, shutting down.
Okay, right.
It's not necessarily, it looks like a 0, but you still can't think. You still can't reason. You still can't carry on a conversation. You're still not able to learn from the experience. You're just shut down. And so back to the substance use thing, all of us, most of us, I should say, have used alcohol or drugs to get us down from that place of like, I'm way up here. I've had a bad day at work. I'm going to come home and have a drink to get myself here. But what that can do is it can actually just take you from being up here to freeze, to like shutting down.
Yeah.
So you're not actually getting to that place of, your wise mind. You're not actually getting to a place of being grounded. If you're just going from, agitated to stoned, you're just going from hyperarousal to hypoarousal.
Tara, can you think of it? This is the mathiest thing I'm ever going to say in my whole life, which is ironic since I'm talking to you, my most mathy friend. If it's a scale and 0 is just pH balanced and 10 is hysterical, is there, can you be a negative 10? Is that what, like I
suppose
you talk, I'm feeling like you were about a -6 all the time. He was never angry, hysterical, irrational. He was just,
yeah. So I think you could put it that way.
Yeah.
You could put it in a negative. It just means you're shut down.
Of me.
Why was that?
Schumacher would be so proud of me. She'd be shocked. I'm a little nuts.
But now can you graph that, Dana?
No, I cannot. Nope, I sure cannot.
Solve for X.
Yeah.
Solve for X.
Yep. Nope. Now I'm going to a 12 quickly. So. Talk about triggering, and I don't mean
because that makes a lot of sense. Because I one of the first people I met in rehab he was proud of the fact that he wanted to be comfortably numb, and I said, dude, and I even said this as a knee-jerk reaction, you can't just quote Pink Floyd at me. This isn't helping. But what you just said makes perfect sense. You want to numb yourself because you don't want to deal with it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you can't reason in either state. I've got this drawing that I've been working on, but I don't know if it makes sense to try to show it on the screen. Well, maybe I'll try.
Yeah.
I'll try to illustrate what I'm talking about, if that's all right, not to make everyone dizzy who might be watching. Can you see this?
We can.
Wow. It's artwork I've been working on. Wow. So this is what I've been talking about. This is the window of tolerance. So this is when you can think.
Yep.
And you can reason. So you're having emotions, but what I wrote here is you can deal with the stress of life. I got this. This is your hyperarousal.
Okay.
So this is like, I've got a little volcano here, trees on fire, tornado. So this is like your fight or flight. And so you're just way up and you're like, or global warming. This is your hypoarousal. This is freeze, shut down, deer in the headlights. You're in turtle shell. A lot of people just kind of go turtle shell, right? In either of these states, you can't do anything except protect yourself.
Yeah.
All right.
And you can't think through, you can't have a conversation, you can't reason, you can't be reasoned with. So if you're dealing with somebody in one of these two places, you can't have a good conversation. You're not going to be able to resolve anything as long as they're in one of these two places. You've got to be in this space in order to move forward in any kind of productive way. So if that helps to illustrate what I was talking about.
It's amazing. And also I resent just the tiniest bit that you also apparently can draw. I mean, let's just be real. The math, the science, and the art. Whatever. Good for you, Terri. Good for you.
I would not call that a work of art, but I just I was bored during my EMDR. I'm not good with Zoom learning. And so I was trying to turn what they were talking about into a picture.
Yeah.
As I was trying to pay attention.
Well, it's really, really clear. And I think helpful for people who are not driven by facts and statistics and those kinds of things, just to think about, all right, if I'm the middle, if I can be in the middle, even if it's tipping up or down, but still in that middle, then I can get to a place where I can talk myself down. Someone else can help talk me down or up, or whatever direction you need to be thinking about.
Well, and I think it can also be for somebody, the other thing when it comes to substance use and addiction is if the problem is that the person does not know how to get themselves to that tolerable level of emotion, then just getting sober doesn't work. And it doesn't work because they don't know, like they still need a way. They still need to understand why they keep going outside of that tolerable window of emotion. And they still need the skills to get themselves into it without using the substances.
Right. And we've talked about that a lot, that alcohol is the problem at our house, but everybody's got this stuff to deal with. Just putting alcohol down doesn't fix the stuff.
So
it fixes the addiction.
Any idiot can be sober. All you got to do is stop drinking. It's staying sober. That's the hard bit.
Yeah.
Well, and it's learning those tools. Like it's a coping skill. And to just view it as pathological isn't helpful. It's a coping skill. It's something they learn to cope. And if you take that away, they still need something to cope. We all need something to cope when our emotions get to that intolerable level.
I have to add this note from Heidi. I'm the least mathiest and least artistic person. Well, thanks for that, ego. I'm with you, Nermsy. Totally with you. This has been unbelievably illuminating, super helpful.
No, I'm glad.
Without your permission, I just chose to tell a story about you that spans decades because it got you on the show and was incredibly
absolutely, Terri,
useful.
that was fantastic.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad I could be of use.
It's like you know what you're doing, Terri. I did have a moment.
Student loans should go for something, right?
I like 12 minutes ago, I looked at you and I thought, this is my nerdy high school friend, and think how unbelievably smart and savvy she is.
Well, and nerdy people are.
Time.
Thank you, Maz.
Time got kind of wavy for me. I don't know. I had a very weird existential moment of, is it 1991 or 2022? And who is this person who I've known all this time? Not that I've ever questioned your intelligence, but this was highly illuminating for me personally on many levels.
Oh, this was fantastic. It was fantastic for everything. Fantastic for me, for you. It's just what this little podcast of ours is all about. So
absolutely
awesome.
All right. You have about 90 seconds to get to your client.
I know you've got work today.
So
that's all right. They're used to me being a couple minutes late. I've yet to really work through the timeliness issue that
we'll address that next time you're on, Terri.
Yeah, next time we'll talk about that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Worse, you are a good baker. So
even a disappointing pan of chocolat is an excellent pan of chocolat from Terri Elofson's Kitchen. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I just hit the leave button, right? And we're good.
You are, hold on. Time got waiting for me too. Are you 15 and sitting on Dana's bed, or are you this? Yes, from my mother. Yeah, wait. That's what I'm going to say about it.
Hi, Bonnie.
Everybody, take care. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Terri. Bye.
Yep.